Welcome to my channel. We're here together with another news story. Before we get into the story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and leave a comment. If you have similar paranormal experiences like yours, you can reach me through the email address I shared in the description. Now, let's move on to the story. Enjoy listening. Good day. My name is Ibrahim. Our lives, so to speak, darkened 2 years ago due to our problematic neighbor. She couldn't get along with anyone and found a reason to quarrel with us. It was as if she thrived on conflicts, causing disturbances even when we weren't making any noise. She'd create similar conflicts and quarrel with everyone in the building. When she began to feel very lonely in the building, she started approaching us again, attempting to reconcile and mend bridges. One evening, my uncle and aunt came to our place. They were going to stay the night. I have a cousin who is 3 years younger than me. I had missed spending time with him, so when they arrived, we all spent time together. After having our dinner, there was a knock at the door. It was our estranged neighbor. She brought sweets, saying, "I saw that your guests arrived. Enjoy the sweets together." She said, "Enjoy it together with a good taste," which was a very considerate gesture, but it seemed quite out of place on her. Normally, she would have yelled at us to keep the noise down. If it were any other time, we were all shocked to see her holding sweets. Anyway, we thanked her and my cousin, and I didn't eat the sweets. We were planning to watch a movie together in the room. We took the popcorn my mom made and went to our room. While we were watching the movie, the others were having sweets inside. We could hear their conversations and laughter from the room. After a while, something happened. We began to hear the sounds of my uncle and dad coughing simultaneously, a strong cough back then. My cousin and I used to laugh at everything, whether it was funny or not. Whenever we looked at each other, we would burst into laughter. When we heard the coughing sound, we looked at each other and started laughing. Later, as these sounds intensified, we realized it wasn't something funny. We quickly ran to the kitchen. What we saw there was this. My mom had taken out meat from the refrigerator in the morning to prepare it. It was on the counter. They were standing there, my uncle, aunt, dad, and mom. They had attacked the meat. They were trying to eat the raw meat, tearing into it. Their eyes were wild. My cousin and I didn't know what to do. We were calling out to them, asking them to come back to their senses. I tried to pull my mom away, but she looked at me just like a dog would when you try to take its bone away, growling. They had all gone insane in an instant. We fled from the building screaming for help. Soon, all the neighbors who heard us came downstairs. We shouted that something had happened to our family. When we entered, pieces of meat and bones were scattered everywhere. They all looked at each other in shock, as if asking, "What have we done? What happened to us?" They were really surprised when they saw the neighbors. "What happened to us? What did we do?" My mom said, "I don't know, Mom. When we entered, you were trying to eat that raw meat. It was like something possessed you, like you all were possessed by a dog." None of them had an answer. They were still astonished by what I was saying. How did we do this? After a while, The neighbors wished us well and left. There was no need to call an ambulance. It wasn't that serious to go to the hospital. It was truly a bizarre situation. Those moments wouldn't leave my mind, of course. That wasn't the biggest event my cousin experienced. I don't know how to put it. But that night my cousin and I couldn't sleep together. We both secretly smoked. Our families didn't know about it. You have cigarettes? He asked. Yes, I said. Let's go to the balcony while everyone is asleep. It's impossible to sleep after experiencing all that. As we approached the balcony, we heard noises. We thought everyone had heard them, but they hadn't slept. Of course, it wasn't the biggest event my cousin had experienced. I don't know how to put it, but that night my cousin and I couldn't sleep together. We both secretly smoked. Our families didn't know about it. Do you have cigarettes? He asked. Yes, I said. Let's go to the balcony while everyone is asleep. It's impossible to sleep after experiencing all that. As we approached the balcony, we heard noises. We thought everyone had heard them, but they hadn't slept. I could hear my uncle and mom's voices, and this was the biggest event I've ever experienced. It's really hard to describe. When my uncle talked about how much he loved my mom, we saw it. My mom replied to him with the same sentences. I heard them saying, "Let's run away from here." My cousin was standing next to me, frozen, unable to move. Tears were streaming down his face. I closed my eyes and prayed, "Let this be a nightmare. Please let me wake up soon. Maybe what I heard isn't real." Then the door opened, and when I saw them coming in, we rushed to our room. We couldn't speak for a while. After about 2 minutes, my mom came into our room and asked, "Were you having a conversation?" I didn't even want to respond. I felt sick to my stomach. She was such a pure and innocent person to me. Every mother is like that. But my world was shattered. It felt like there wasn't a man left in the world, as my uncle had confessed his love for her. I even thought about suicide at that moment. What if my father had heard this? I asked my mom to tell him that we were having a private conversation and requested her to leave the room. After she left, I couldn't hold back. I started crying. What were we going to do? Whom could we tell? They were considering leaving everything behind. Moreover, on top of the strange incident from the night before, this was the night that ruined our lives. It hadn't been a week since the incident, and this time we caught my dad talking to another woman. I caught their conversations on his phone. I could only confide in my cousin and shared it with him. What was happening? Our family, which had been so ordinary, normal, and happy. Suddenly everyone was betraying each other. My mom and dad were becoming different people at night. They wouldn't talk to each other in the evenings. Everything changed in the evenings. Whereas the days remained normal, my mom would turn on the kitchen faucet and watch the water flow for minutes. My dad used to wander around the house unconsciously, moving some items in the morning when he couldn't find them, and despite being the one who moved them, he'd blame me, scolding me for changing their places. One night, I don't remember the exact time, there was a loud noise inside the house. My dad had unconsciously gone out onto the balcony and thrown our living room television down. Thankfully, he did it at night. If it had been during the day, it might have hit someone. I called for my mom to help. When she came, she was no different. She looked down and smiled when she saw the TV had fallen. "I'm glad you threw it. If you hadn't, I would have," she said, smiling at each other in a terrifying way. "What's happening? Snap out of it. Mom, Dad, look at me. Look at my face. Why did you throw that TV? Dad, why are you laughing? You're driving me crazy with this laughter," I said. But the more I insisted, the more they laughed. Their laughter was echoing throughout the building. I grabbed my phone and left the house, heading straight to my uncle's. They weren't expecting me at that hour. My uncle opened the door and was so startled when he saw me. "What happened? Is something wrong with your mom?" he said, asking about my mom first instead of his brother. This infuriated me even more. They both lost it. My dad threw the TV off the balcony. I don't know what happened. Both of them were on the balcony, laughing hysterically. They went insane, literally, I said. My cousin came at that moment. He had just woken up. I explained to him what had happened. My uncle and Aunt went to check on our house. My cousin and I stayed at their place that night. We couldn't reach any of them. They didn't answer our calls. We stayed awake all night, waiting. Around 7 in the morning, they came home. My mom and Dad had tears in their eyes. They both had been crying. My aunt came to us and said, "A shaman will come here soon. Your parents aren't in a good condition, and neither are we. The shaman will check all of us." After my aunt left, I asked my cousin if similar things were happening to them, what my uncle and aunt were doing. He started crying uncontrollably. "I don't know what's happening to them. I don't know what's wrong with them," he sobbed. Yesterday, when my mom entered the bathroom, the mirror shattered on its own. Keep it between us. But 2 days ago, my dad threw himself in front of a car. Thank goodness the car wasn't going too fast. The driver managed to stop when he saw my dad, he told me. "Take your dad to a doctor." When he saw me, he threw himself in front of the car. I asked my dad, but he couldn't remember anything. It happened suddenly. Ever since the incidents at your house, these events didn't stop. I wonder if the upcoming shaman can resolve the situation. What do you think? Maybe their cheating is related to all this. Do you think everything will be fixed? Can we go back to how things were? I hope we do. I hope the shaman comes and helps. Let's see if he's a trustworthy person. We'll talk to him privately, explain my mom and uncle's situation. If anyone can solve this, it's a shaman, I said. The shaman arrived and gave us some information beforehand. It was clear he knew a lot. He performed a ritual and said all 4 of us had consumed a bewitched food. After the shaman's ritual, we wanted to have a private conversation. The shaman asked the others to leave the room. My cousin, the shaman, and I stayed on the balcony. We talked about what my uncle and mom had said. The shaman assured us that all of this had happened due to a spell, and once the spell was broken, everything would return to normal. We were so relieved. It was like waking up from a terrible nightmare. This man had truly saved us. The lokma dessert brought by our estranged neighbor turned out to be enchanted. Only my cousin and I hadn't eaten it. Who knows what would have happened to us if we had eaten it? The shaman began his ritual from outside our building, drawing a huge circle around the building's perimeter. With this, they won't be able to enter this house, he said. Then he wrote talismans for all four of us, saying, wherever you go, none of them will be able to come near you. He read incantations for hours as the shaman read. They were all in distress, contorting in pain. My mom felt nauseous and rushed to the bathroom, and my aunt turned crimson. That's enough. Don't read anymore, the shaman insisted. Despite breaking the spell, things had spiraled out of control. My parents divorced, and so did my aunt and uncle because their relationships had been exposed. I currently live with my dad, occasionally see my mom, while my cousin, in her final year of university, studies teaching. I can say that this upheaval turned both of our lives upside down, even though these events happen due to the enchantment. Thinking about what occurred makes me ashamed on their behalf. My cousin and I find it difficult to face each other. This incident has completely changed our lives. We've reached the end of our story. I thank the person who shared this story. Until our next story, farewell.